creamy bebinka, the queen of Goan desserts. That's the Goan Christmas sweet we are making today. This soft, multi-layered dessert has a melt-in-the-mouth taste, and I'll show you 2 ways to make it. The second way with a lovely Christmassy twist. So let's get started. Hey there, this is Veena from Patter Cake. A warm welcome to my channel. And if you're looking for authentic ingredient proportions and all the essential instructions for getting a recipe right, you've come to the right place. Making bebinka or bibik, as we also call it, involves just a few simple steps. You just need the patience to make it, because baking it layer by layer takes time. But the first step is to prepare some caramel syrup. To this thick bottomed vessel heating on a medium flame, I'll add 4 tablespoons of granulated sugar. And to get the caramelization process going, I'll add 2 teaspoons of water to the sugar. We'll let the sugar melt and start caramelizing without stirring it. We'll swirl it around by tilting the vessel and let the sugar caramelize till it becomes dark brown in color. Now we'll carefully pour in 4 tablespoons of water. Let's bring the syrup to a boil. We'll let it boil for around 2 minutes till it thickens, and then turn off the heat. The caramel syrup will thicken some more on cooling. Next, we have to beat 8 egg yolks. One of them broke when I added it to the bowl. You could beat these with an electric beater, but I prefer using a whisk. We'll whisk the eggs till they are light and frothy. If you're wondering about the name bebinka, back in the 17th century, when Goa was a Portuguese colony, a resourceful nun by the name of Sister Bibiana, who lived in the Santa Monica convent in Old Goa, came up with a recipe in which she could use egg yolks with coconut milk, coconuts being abundantly available in Goa, to create a delicious and innovative dessert. The original traditional bebinka recipe has 7 layers. Okay, now let's beat the eggs some more, along with 320 grams or 1.5 cups of granulated sugar that I have powdered. We'll beat this mixture well till it is creamy and pale yellow in color. To this mixture, we'll now add some coconut milk and some maida or all-purpose flour. Here I have 3.5 cups of coconut milk, extracted from 2 3/4 cups of grated fresh coconut. You could also use canned coconut milk. And this is 150 grams or 1.25 cups of maida, which I have already sifted. We'll now mix in the coconut milk and maida alternately into the batter, adding these ingredients in parts. And mix everything well till the batter is free from lumps. Like this. Here I have 3/4 teaspoon of grated nutmeg. To our batter, let's add around half a teaspoon of it, reserving the remaining 1/4 teaspoon to add in later. I'll also add 2 pinches of salt and stir the batter. It's now time to measure the volume of the bebinka batter. Why are we measuring the volume? Well, here's why. This will need a little math and just around 2 minutes to explain. But you need to understand this if you plan to make a bigger bebinka or a smaller one. It's useful to know. But those who want to skip this can proceed straight to the recipe at around 6 minutes 12 seconds. So, here's how you can pick a pan of the right size for a bebinka recipe and also plan the thickness of each layer. To do all this, you have to first measure the volume of your batter in cups or ml. Next, pour water up to the brim of the pan you're thinking of using. And then measure the volume of this water to check the volume or capacity of your pan. If the pan capacity is less than the volume of your batter, you obviously cannot use that pan. It would be too small. So then you'll have to pick a pan that's 1 or 2 sizes larger and repeat the process of checking its volume. The capacity of your pan should be equal to that of your batter or slightly more, say 1 cup more. You could also decide at the start how many layers you want to make. Once you decide on the number of layers, just divide the volume of the entire batter by the number of layers. Let's say you want to make 10 layers, like I am making today. Then divide the volume of your batter by 10 to get the volume you'll have to pour for each layer. But just check that the batter covers the base of the pan completely. Hope all of this is clear to you. Now back to our recipe. I measured the batter with a measuring jug and found the volume was 5.5 cups or 1320 ml. Since I'm making 10 layers, that works out to 130 ml per layer. That's 2 ladlefuls of my quarter cup ladle plus around 1 tablespoon, meaning a little more than half a cup. Having fixed that, now let's divide our 5.5 cups of batter equally into 2 vessels. That is, I have to add 2 3/4 cups to each one. To avoid lengthening the video, I divided the batter offline. Remember, you don't have to make an accurate division of the batter. A few teaspoons here and there will be fine. Now to make one part of the batter darker in color, we'll add the caramel syrup we made that measures around 4 tablespoons to the batter in this first vessel. This will increase the volume slightly. So if you want to have around the same volume of batter in each vessel, then before adding in the caramel syrup here, you could remove around 2 tablespoons of the batter from this vessel and add it to the other one. And then stir in the caramel syrup so that both the vessels now have more or less the same volume of batter. Now this will be our darker brown colored batter. Into this lighter batter, let's add in the rest of the grated nutmeg so that it will have a stronger nutmeg flavor. And into the darker colored batter, we'll stir in half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now that we have both our batters ready, I went ahead and started preheating my oven to 180 degrees centigrade, that's 360 Fahrenheit. With my batter measuring 5.5 cups, I picked a 7-inch by 7-inch square pan that has a capacity of around 6 cups for this bebinka. I've greased it liberally with melted ghee, lined the bottom with parchment paper, and then spread some melted ghee on top of it as well. Preferably, place the pan on a baking tray before putting it into the oven to make sure the bottommost layer does not get burnt by the time all the 10 layers are baked. Always stir the batter before ladling it. For the first layer, I'll pour out 2 ladlefuls and a little more of the dark colored batter, making sure it covers the entire base. I'll now take this to my oven. Since it has already reached the set temperature, the light has gone off. But if you look here, you'll see that for baking this first layer, I have both the upper and lower heaters on. However, from the next layer onwards, we'll have only the upper heater on. This layer could take around 15 minutes to bake. After 15 minutes, my first layer has baked perfectly. As you can see, the surface is firm and doesn't stick to my fingers. We'll wait for a minute or so and then brush around 1 to 2 teaspoons of melted ghee liberally over the surface of this first layer. Instead of ghee, you could use melted butter. Let's now carefully pour a layer of the lighter batter into the pan, checking that it covers the entire base. Like I mentioned, from now on, all the layers will be baked with just the upper heater on. I've turned off the lower one. We'll bake this for around 10 to 12 minutes till the top of this layer 2 is firm and non-sticky. This took 10 minutes to bake. Sometimes the baked layer could puff up a little, but it will settle down in a few seconds. We'll let the second layer cool for a minute and then, like before, after brushing the top with melted ghee, pour in a layer of batter. This time, the darker batter, since we are adding the light and dark batters alternately. And we'll bake it exactly as we baked the second layer. Similarly, we'll proceed with baking the rest of the layers. This is the 9th layer. And now we'll brush the top with ghee and add the 10th and final layer, which is the light one. We started with a dark layer and are finishing with a light one. Finally, it's all done. A gentle reminder to please like this video if you find it useful, and do subscribe for more tasty recipes. We'll brush the top of the bebinka with melted ghee and let it cool in the pan for around 8 hours. I'll let it cool overnight. Just to show you something different and make a bebinka that's more Christmassy, I'm baking a smaller bebinka with a small twist to the recipe. This is a 5-egg bebinka. I'll share the proportions for this one too in the description. And I've completed all the steps right up to the stage of dividing the batter into 2 parts and adding the extra grated nutmeg to the light batter and vanilla extract to the darker one. Here's the darker batter. You can see I made a darker caramel this time. And here's the lighter colored batter. Now comes the twist. To this lighter batter, I'm going to add one of the colors of Christmas, green. I'm using liquid gel color in the shade of leaf green. This is a concentrate and has to be added carefully, or you could end up adding too much color. To make sure that doesn't happen, I'm going to take a little of the gel color and thin it with a little water, and then add it a little at a time to the batter, till I get the shade of green I want. This looks good. I've already started preheating my oven. I'm using a round 6-inch pan for this bebinka, and I've lined the bottom with parchment paper. This bebinka will have 8 layers, each one requiring a little less than half a cup of batter. Okay, let's pour out the first layer, once again starting with the dark batter. Here it is, after baking it for 15 minutes. Let's brush the top with melted ghee. And then pour in the second layer using the green colored batter. And this is how it looks after baking. I'll now proceed with baking the other layers. After baking all 8 layers, here's our smaller, more Christmassy bebinka. I'll brush the top with melted ghee and cool this too overnight. Hi, I'm back. After cooling both bebinkas, here they are. The regular one and the more Christmassy one. Looks good, no? To unmold the bebinkas, we'll have to warm the bottom of each pan briefly on a tawa to melt the ghee at the bottom and around the sides. This will help release each bebinka smoothly from the pan. This is an old tawa heating on a medium flame. After 2 to 3 minutes, when the bottom has heated up, I'll take this pan off the heat. Now let's warm up the second bebinka. The bottom of this pan too has now heated up. I'll now run a knife around the sides of this pan and then upturn the bebinka on the kitchen chopping board after tapping the bottom of the pan to release the bebinka. Let me cut off a thin slice from one side so you can see the striped bebinka pattern. All the 10 layers are clearly visible. Now let's unmold the smaller bebinka. Wow, it has unmolded so cleanly. I'll slice this one too, so you can check this 8-layered bebinka as well. So pretty, so festive. Time for a taste test. Wow, it's soft, it's creamy, and amazingly tasty. Now let me show you slices of both the bebinkas side by side. So how did you like my Christmassy twist? Do let me know through the comments, okay? Now pick which version you like, but do try out my bebinka recipe this Christmas. I guarantee you'll love its soft, melt-in-the-mouth texture. I'll soon be back with another Christmas recipe, so stay connected. Take care and happy cooking!